Right. We are live. Hello and happy Saturday for those who will be joining live today, and for those who are watching this after the live presentation for another episode, if you will, of the Neville Goddard lecture series. For those who may be watching this for the first time, brand new to the series, I started this a handful of weeks ago to really dissect and dig into the lectures of Neville Goddard for the purpose of really understanding his works and his teachings. Anybody who is learning about the law of assumption, anyone who is interested in conscious creation, it really does help to have this understanding of his teachings. The thing is, with Neville Goddard, he can be difficult to understand. He can be difficult to read. So I've sort of taken it upon myself to break down and highlight important parts of his lectures and the key takeaways that we want to get from it. Just mainly due to the fact that there is a lot of saturation of content. There's a lot of people speaking about and his translations, his teachings are getting a bit lost in translation. So today's lecture, we're going to be talking about one that has been requested many, many times, and that is the Pruning Shears of Revision. It was a lecture that he gave in 1954, and is one of his more popular lectures because it delves into a topic that is well known in this community, but naturally we may have some aversion to, we may have some difficulty with. So in this lecture, he sort of breaks down the importance of it and gives a simple step-by-step on how to approach it. I have also made some videos about revision that you are free to check out. But also, if you would like to read along to this lecture, I have that link down in the description box. So as I usually do, I'll be switching back and forth between sharing the screen and reading the lecture, and then going back and sort of translating again what we just went over. Without further ado, let's go ahead. Oh, and you might hear some kittens in the background. They're okay. They're just wanting some attention, which they will receive very soon. All right. Okay. The Pruning Shears of Revision. I'm excited to dive into this one. This morning's subject is the pruning shears of revision. I firmly believe that if you will wisely and daily use the pruning shears of revision, that you will find there is no objective beyond your ability to realize. And I mean that seriously. No objective beyond your ability to realize. When I was a boy of 7, a lady said to me, "I have had a vision concerning you. I'll make it now very, very clear to you. I do not know what it is you are going to do, but I've been shown you will do something that through the centuries after you are gone, man will not undo it. I can't see it, and through the centuries you will grow in stature long. I can see it, and through the centuries you will grow in stature long after you have gone." And then 3 men will be mentioned in hundreds of years to come, and you will be one of the 3 when something is discussed that was done for man. I think it's pretty cool and pretty spot on. Neville is growing in popularity over half a century since he passed. I feel that this morning's subject, that this could be it. That if I never said another word, and you heard it and believed it, and really used it, this would be the planting that would spread from us here that tomorrow could not undo. For it is magic, this pruning shears of revision. It really is not only the achievement of objectives, but if you do it daily, it will awaken in you the spirit of Jesus, which is continual forgiveness of sin. So a couple things that I want to break down there first that's actually really cool to mention. So Neville talks about in some of his later lectures as well, I believe it was his housekeeper, the lady that told him about the vision of him. I believe it was a housekeeper or somebody who would watch Neville and his siblings, somebody who took care of the family, because Neville was one of 10 siblings. There was a lot of people in the household, and again, he goes into this more in great detail. But she had a vision of him and saw that he was going to make a significant contribution, and he would be known and spoken about, and what he taught would be known and spoken about for centuries to come. And here we are, over half a century after his passing, and he's only grown in popularity since then. So I thought that was really cool. And he mentions right out of the gate that if he were to not speak another word, if you were to take away only one thing from his teachings, that would be revision, the pruning shears of revision. And we're going to get into why he called them the pruning shears in a second. But he was incredibly adamant about the importance of revising the day and making this a daily practice. So I've heard from some people that I have spoken to, that there is, some who claim that revision is not important, that we can sort of be dismissive about it. And while I would say that it is not 100% a necessity, that you're not going to manifest without it, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. To dismiss this importance and to brush it off would be criminal. And he's going to go into why. Also, when he talks about the Spirit of Jesus, he's talking about awakening. He's talking about sort of enlightenment, if you will. And for those who may not know, when we talk about sin, when he mentions sin, he's talking about missing the mark or failing at this. So that's the mystic translation of sin. It's not doing something bad. It's aiming to do something, but failing to reach the objective. So revision is the continual forgiveness of sin. So you're essentially taking aim again. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's continue. In this teaching, the sinner should always go free. You will never condemn him. For when the Spirit is awake in you, you will realize in him that there is no condemnation, only forgiveness. And forgiveness is not as man of the world thinks when he omits the actual execution of his revenge. What we mean by forgiveness, the identification of the other that we would forgive with the ideal that the other wants to embody in the world. And so we do to him what we would expect or would like the world to do to us. Again, this is the golden rule. So whatever I myself would like to embody, that is the vision that I must hold of every man that I meet in my world, that no man is to be discarded. Every man is to be redeemed. And my life is the process whereby that redemption is brought about. And I do it by simply identifying the other with the ideal I want to externalize in my world. So this part is where it can be very difficult, admittedly. And I'm going to take probably a little bit more stops and translations than normal, because number one, this is a bit of a shorter lecture than usual, but there's also a lot of parts that are really, really important to take away. And I want to make sure that people understand, because this is where it can be a challenge for most of us. The sinner should always go free. You will never condemn another. You will never condemn him. What he's saying here is that we want to always see others in the way that they desire to experience, that we would desire to have had onto us. So if somebody comes to you with a problem, they're facing a challenge, a difficulty, we want to, in this case, revise the conversation that was had, revise them telling you the bad news, and instead hearing the good news. So for example, if somebody was stressing about not having work, being unemployed, and wanting to be employed, you would change that conversation. You would imagine it instead to where he's telling you about his new work and how much he loves it there. So that's just an example. We do not condemn him, and that means we don't accept the bad news that others give us. We don't accept the terrible premise. We change it. For when the Spirit is awake in you, you will realize there is no condemnation, only forgiveness. So, and forgiveness is not how we think of it. It's not, oh, I'll forgive you, but I won't really forget. It's actively changing that outcome that was not ideal in imagination. And that's something that we want to practice doing for everyone. So we do not take the bad news that others share with us and accept it as final. But let's continue. Now we will go back to the second of Genesis. It is said, and God placed man in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. Now, when you read the story, you think it happened thousands of years ago. I've come to tell you it is now. You are now in the Garden of Eden, and you think you are shut out or banished. You are in it, and the garden is your mind. But you need, like every gardener, you need pruning shears, for you have slept. As you are told in that second chapter, having slept, weeds have appeared in the garden, and the weeds are revealing themselves by the conditions and the circumstances of life. For your garden is always projecting itself on the screen of space, and you can see by looking carefully at your world what you allow to grow in the garden of God. But you have a mission, you have a purpose. It is not to amass a fortune. You can do it if you want to. It's not to be famous. It is not to be some mighty power, but simply to tend to the garden of God. That's your purpose. You are placed in the garden to dress it and to keep it, that only the lovely things grow in the garden of God. Now, every man in the world is rooted in you, who look out and see that world. Every man is rooted in me. He ends in me as I am rooted in and end in God. Because he is rooted in me, he cannot bear other than the nature the root allows. So he is in me, and any changes desired in the outer world can be brought about only if I change the source of the thing I see growing in my world. He shares a poem here. So don't judge it, because you are the source of the thing that you are beholding. Now turn within and prune it by using these pruning shears of revision. Now this is how we do it. At the end of the day, I review the day. I don't judge it. I simply review it. I look over the entire day, all the episodes, all the events, all the conversations, all the meetings, and then as I see it clearly in my mind's eye, I rewrite it. I rewrite it and I make it conform to the ideal day I wish I had experienced. I take scene after scene and rewrite it, revise it, and having revised my day, then in my imagination, I relive that day, the revised day, and I do it over and over in my imagination until this seeming imagined state begins to take on to me the tones of reality. It seems that it's real, that I actually did experience it, and I have found from experience that these revised days, if really lived, will change my tomorrows. When I meet people tomorrow that today disappointed me, they will not tomorrow, for in me I have changed the very nature of that being. And having changed him, he bears witness tomorrow of the change that took place within me. It is my duty to take this garden and really make it a garden by daily using the pruning shears of revision. So this is the part that is really important. And again, I know he might make it sound very simple. It is simple in concept, maybe not always in practice, but one of the very best habits that we can get ourselves into is daily revision. It really can be looked at like your mind is a garden, and at all times there are beautiful flowers being planted and there are nasty weeds being planted. And when those weeds take sprout, that's the undesirable, that's the unwanted circumstances, and it can get overgrown really quickly. So, using this metaphor, we want to really prune these vines. We really want to uproot these seeds every day. We want to relive the day in imagination as we would have wanted it to go. This may seem daunting at first. It does get easier with practice. But if somebody today disappointed us, if we found them to be rude to us, or they gave us bad news, or whatever the case, if revised, we will see that change in them. But Neville also makes a point that we want to practice doing this, to imagine this until it feels real for us. And that's the part that I think often gets overlooked. We may just try to quickly imagine the new scene, but not really to the point of conviction, not really to the point of feeling that. We want to imagine it until it feels real, that it seems like this event really happened. That's it. When there is a disconnect, when there is seemingly failure at revision, it's in my experience and from talking to many others, it's because we have not imagined or we have not revised it to the point where it feels real. Like it should feel like these new memories are what actually happened. All right, let's continue. I know from experience it will not only bring about these objectives and bring about these changes, but the glorious thing is it awakens in you, who use it, the Spirit of Jesus. And you will find yourself then not justifying, but forgiving. And you will realize that freedom and forgiveness are indissolubly linked. You cannot be free and not forgive. For the one that you would bind and judge and condemn angers you by your own judgment of him, for he is in you. And so, by identifying him with the ideal you want to really realize, you free yourself. You are told, forgive, and you shall be forgiven. Forgive not, and then you shall not be forgiven. It's automatic. It can't be otherwise, for the whole springs from you who behold it. And as you begin to practice it, the very Spirit arouses itself within you, and you know that you are he that others spoke about and thought lived 2,000 years ago. Again, when he speaks of the Spirit of Jesus or referencing Jesus, he's referencing that awakened state. When you've awakened to the realization that you are the operant power. That's what he's referring to. So not only are you going to change the events of your world, but you're going to awaken to that fact that you are the operant power. You will no longer be asleep, for lack of better words. So when you realize it through actual knowledge. You know it. No argument. You don't tell others. You know that you are he. And then you will read the words in the 9th of Hebrews. He appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And you will know you are the one that put away sin by the sacrifice of self. And by the sacrifice of self, it's not being a brave one who throws himself into the line of fire to protect a brother. It doesn't mean one who gives his body to be burned, one who is nailed on a cross, but the self of man is the sum total of all that that man believes and consents to as true. So that's the self that is sacrificed. So what he's saying here, the self that is sacrificed or that is changed is the old self, right? Through revision, this is going to be a powerful way to change the self concept entirely. to rid yourself of old limiting beliefs, assumptions, expectations, identities, insecurities. All of that is what is sacrificed. So he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. So he appeared to take aim again by sacrificing the old state of consciousness. Basically, in the 9th of Hebrews, it's translated to he appeared to change his circumstances and through the change that he made in himself, through sacrificing that old self by changing the self concept. The self of man is the sum total of all that man believes and consents to as true. That's the self that is sacrificed. I heard of this lady, and she would make some man a wonderful wife, and yet she is unwed. She desires to be in the companion of a great noble person, but she is unwed. I heard that. That becomes a part of myself. That's my knowledge. I must sacrifice that self, that aspect of my being be as happy as I am, and those in my world are. For that's the self I must sacrifice and put away sin. For sin, to the mystic, means missing the mark. It doesn't mean the violation of certain codes, unless, of course, you have a mark and the violation fell short. But sin to the mystic is simply having an aim in life and failing to realize it. So when you miss the mark, you have sinned. So he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And knowing that himself is only all that he consents to, all that he accepts, all that he believes to be true, then what am I believing concerning that one? He is unemployed and he can't find a job. I'm believing it. Now put away that sin where he is missing his mark. And then by the putting away of the sin, I do it only by the sacrifice of myself. And myself is that belief. So now I revise it. I can't say, well, I will no longer believe he is unemployed. I believe he is unemployed. So I know that was a lot, so I really want to break that part down because this is important again. What he's saying in this example, he knows of a woman who would make a wonderful wife to somebody, and she desires to be in a loving marriage. She desires to have a companion, a husband, but she's unwed. So when Neville receives this knowledge, when we receive this fact about another, that becomes a part of ourself. We heard that, we believe it, and we accept it as true. That's the part of self that needs to be sacrificed, using this metaphor. That is the part that we need to change. Because if I am believing something of another, it is still myself that is believing that. I am taking that assumption as a fact. And so in this example, I no longer want to hold that fact. That fact has to be sacrificed or it has to be changed. So we do that through revising. The self I must sacrifice and put away sin, for to sin means missing the mark. So if somebody doesn't have a job, they want to be employed. We hear that they can't find a job. We're the ones that are believing that. Are we accepting that as true and final? Or are we changing that? Are we going to sacrifice that part of ourself that knows that person to be unwed or unemployed or not having what they want? Or are we going to take aim? Are we going to actually now hit that mark and no longer sin? I hope this is making sense, but these are points that I always try to emphasize. I know it can get confusing. Let's continue. Oh, I can't say, well, I will no longer believe he is unemployed. I believe he's unemployed. This line here, he's saying, we can't just say, oh yeah, I'll believe that, Well, I will no longer believe he's unemployed. I actually have to believe he's unemployed. So you're declaring it. You're not just saying this for the sake of saying it. You're actually, in this example, you believe that this person is no longer in that bind. I do it by the pruning shears of revision. I bring him before my mind's eye and I congratulate him on his good fortune, because he is now gainfully employed. I allow him to accept my congratulations, because I do not see a man unemployed, I see him employed. And he knows he is in my mind's eye, for in that state I have pruned him from the unemployed state, and once more reshaped the branch that grows in the garden of God. Tomorrow people will see him as they could not have seen him before the pruning that took place within me, and he will be gainfully employed. That one is unwell. You prune that branch. You don't accept one thing in the world as final unless it conforms to the ideal you want to realize in the world. But you do it daily. If you do not prune it daily, you will get out of the habit. Then weeds will grow. Every man who really is a gardener, who calls himself a gardener in the garden of God, for every day is the opportunity to really prune the tree, this wonderful tree. And so everyone that you meet is a branch rooted in the vine that you are. And you are that special tree in the garden of God, a tree bearing life, a tree bearing fruit for the food of the nations. You are that one. So what he's saying here is, in your experience, in your reality, you have to tend to your garden, because everyone that you meet is a branch on the vine that is you. In your reality, you are the vine, and everything else is the branches. So we have to prune these branches that are not ideal. But he also emphasizes the point that we have to do this daily. You don't accept one thing in the world as final unless it conforms to the ideal you want to realize in the world. I know this is something we hear over and over and over again, but my God, how many things are we still accepting as true that are terrible, that are unwanted, that make us sad or angry? There's probably so many branches still. And if we don't get in the practice of doing this every day, we will fall out of that habit and weeds will grow. Basically, if we don't do it daily, we're going to get in the weeds, and things are going to be just piling on, basically. And let's continue. If you take me seriously today, tonight do not let the sun descend upon any vexation of the day. Just look at it. Don't deny it. Don't duck it. Look at it that you may prune it and then reshape it. Take the conversations with your friends today. Were they pleasant? Were they arguments? No matter what it is, were they negative? Then rewrite the script and just imagine the conversation to have taken place that now you are rewriting for the first time. And it will take place for everything in your world that you behold. Though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination. And this wonderful imagination of yours is Christ Jesus. Imagination is the actual habitation of every created thing. No matter what you see in the world, it springs from your imagination. So that's where you go. That's the workshop. That's the garden of God. And I'm taking a lot of breaks and breaking a lot of things down because these are important things to note. Do not let the sun descend upon any vexation of the day. What he's saying there is, do not let yourself go to sleep tonight without having revised any parts of the day that were not ideal, that did not come up to your expectations or what you would have wanted to experience. Don't deny it. Don't duck it. Just observe it. So that's an important point, because what we tend to do unknowingly, unconsciously, is duck it or deny it. We are hesitate to go back and look at the past events of the day. We don't want to revisit these memories that were not ideal because it doesn't feel good and because we're scared that we're going to just plant that seed again. What Neville's saying here very clearly is just observe the events of the day. When you're going over at the end of the day, you're going back over, you're just observing it. You're just looking at it. You're not judging it. You're not denying or ducking it. You're just seeing it for what it is. And then prune it and shape it to how you would have wanted it to see fit. Again, the idea that we don't want to go back to the old memories is false. We want to go back to the old memories with the purpose of changing it. Now, we don't want to revisit the old story over and over without changing. We don't want to continue to accept that old story, which is what we typically do. But if we're revisiting a bad memory for the purpose of revision, that is absolutely warranted, and that is absolutely what we want to do. He talks again about how your imagination is your creative power, which it really and truly is. That is your workshop. That is your playground. That is the garden of God. That is where everything exists. We're learning here to utilize that power. That is Christ Jesus. Let's continue. And now you have a mission. You have a purpose in life. It's a noble purpose because you have been selected to really become the chief gardener in the garden of God. And in the garden, you must have pruning shears. And the pruning shears is revision. You simply revise. And as you revise the day, you repeal the day. For the day is not slipping into the past. It does not recede, as people think. It is always advancing into the future to confront you, either pruned or in some strange weed-like state. So it is entirely up to us. I hope that every man and woman here today will take me seriously and start this day pruning your garden, pruning your mind. I know before I leave the city in a matter of 2 weeks that you will be able to tell me of the new things that spring into your world or that spring from that prune tree that is your own lovely imagination. You try it. Then you will know what Blake meant when he said, in heaven, the only art of living is forgetting and forgiving. The only art of living is complete forgetfulness by putting something in its place. No vacuum, but putting something in its place. So important. Really quick note, when it comes to the past, we've always taken it that the past recedes into the past. The past is done, it's fixed in stone. That is not true. That is never true. What we have experienced that is now past to us will advance into the future and confront us again. And that's because we're always planting these seeds. We're always planting these impressions. So based off of past impressions, how I reacted, what I was assuming, what I was believing, what I was giving my focus and attention to, that is going to be revisited. That's going to be outpictured again. Every time that we recall a memory, we are basically just leaving that impression again, which will then become our 3D experience. So recollecting a memory is reliving it in the literal sense. So when you read these strange stories that you read in the daily press, you simply ignore them. They mean nothing. Men who are calling themselves leaders, shepherds of the flock, they excommunicate. Not just one religion, all religions, the leaders take it upon themselves to excommunicate. Not knowing, nothing is to be discarded. Not a thing in the world can you discard, for it is forever. But it can be pruned and made to conform to the ideal image. The man who will not revise his day either does not know it, or he has lost the vision of that life into the likeness of which it is the true labor of the Spirit of Jesus that transformed this life. So you don't discard them. Whatever we read in the day, whatever is going on, we do not give focus and attention and attach meaning to things that are not ideal. And then he goes on to tell a story about in an issue of Time magazine, there was a philosopher that, yeah, I'll leave you guys to read this part if you would like. He's just giving an example, basically, about how like some of the so-called leaders of this world are, they're just always out picturing whatever it is that we are assuming. Again, if you want to read the it is in the lecture, in the link below. But the point that he's trying to make here: you shepherds who spoil my vines, and you who have come into my garden, and you've taken my vines. Now it bears no grape, and it bears no leaf. And in the garden of Jerusalem now it has become a weed. Basically, he's talking about how the blind are leading the blind, which not much has changed in the 70 years since he gave this lecture. A lot of these so-called leaders are just the blind leading the blind. So we're not accepting any premise that is not ideal. You take me this morning at my word. You owe me nothing. It costs you not a thing to come here this morning. You come, you give me your time, and I give you my time. But you go out and try it and start this day pruning that wonderful imagination of yours. Do you know someone that is evil? Stop knowing it by bringing him before your mind's eye and carry on with him the most wonderful conversation in the world, with a tender spirit, a loving spirit, and believe in the reality of this communion. Because if you really do it, you are entering the kingdom of heaven. For you enter heaven by a loving, knowing communion with a friend. So make him a friend if he is a lovely one, no matter what he is. You can prune him, and then as you prune him, you are doing the work which you were sent to do for man, and you are that man. You are placed this day in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. Don't let it continue growing weeds in your world. Again, really important point that needs to be stressed over and over again. If we know somebody in our world that is evil, in this case, that could be somebody who's a jerk to us, somebody who's rude to us, maybe somebody that has done something upsetting to us. Do not continue to hold that image of him in your mind. Do not continue to see them in that light. Instead, we want to see this person as the ideal. So in this example, see him as somebody who is lovely, somebody who is caring, somebody who is thoughtful. But see them in your mind as somebody that you would want to interact with, and really engage with that and believe in that. Really let yourself feel into that interaction, that ideal interaction and imagination. And don't let yourself fall out of this habit. Like once we form this new habit, you're just going to automatically prune and reshape all throughout the day as you see it. If you have an interaction that's not ideal, you're going to change it right there on the spot. But first we have to get in the practice. We don't want to continue growing weeds in the world, as in we don't want to continue to let all of these terrible things continue to flourish. This part's the hard one to grasp. You are absolutely responsible for every being you meet in this world. That's your responsibility. Just like the teacher we told you of who took this little child that was just about to be expelled. No, the child is not expelled because she heard what you are hearing this morning. So this is another story that he told in a previous lecture, by the way, just as an FYI. There was a teacher who visits his lectures that had a student, rowdy student. She revised. Anyways, he goes on to tell. The child is not expelled because she heard what you are hearing this morning. So the teacher brought before her mind's eye the child that the principal, the psychiatrist, and all the faculty had agreed unanimously to expel her on her 16th birthday, for she was rude, she was crude, she was unethical. And she went home on a Sunday night and brought that child before her mind's eye. This is the teacher. The teacher went home on a Sunday night and brought that child before her mind's eye and communed with her and saw in her a tender child, a considerate child, a loving child. The next day, Monday, in class, she expressed all the kindness of that revision of the night before. And 10 days later, when it was seen and witnessed by all of the faculty and the psychiatrist, another meeting was called, and they repealed their verdict of 10 days before, and the child is not expelled. She still sits in the George Washington High School in New York City, which is considered an excellent school. And so there she is, with no black marks against her, because one teacher sat in the audience, as you are here, and she believed what I hope everyone here will believe, and she redeemed a branch of her own tree. She didn't realize the child was herself. She saw up to that very moment all the children that she taught in pure objectivity. Blind man sees the world objective to himself, something detached from himself. When man begins to awake, he sees everything subjectively related. Everything he meets is part of himself. And what he does not now understand, still he knows that it is related by affinity to some as yet unrealized force in his own being. So he doesn't discard it. He knows his life is the process by which he will redeem it, and he redeems it by using the pruning shears of revision. So in this example, in the success story, a teacher that was in Neville's audience had a student that was looking at expulsion because she was poorly behaved. She was crude. She was rude. And back in the 1950s, very unacceptable. So she went home that Sunday, revised and imagined the girl as being lovely, as being tender, as being kind and considerate. She revised to the point of feeling it. And that next day, the girl showed up different. And the whole faculty, the principal, the psychiatrist of that school changed their mind. They changed the verdict, and that girl was not expelled. So again, just to show you the importance of this. And the takeaway here is that everyone that we encounter is a part of us. Like, it's part of our conception of self. So we have to be mindful of what we are accepting as true for ourselves and for others and about others. We do this daily, using the pruning shears of revision every day. So I feel that if after these 50 years of walking this earth, that this is what that lady saw when I was but 7, I could really close the eye on 3 dimensions at any moment, knowing you will not disprove it. You may never use them, but you will never disprove this art of revision. And any man who will try it will prove it to his own satisfaction, that he can rise beyond the wildest dream of men. And rising, he awakens the spirit of forgiveness. He will rise in the early stages in the successful venture. He will increase his income. He will do all of these things. But he will realize after a little while that it wasn't the purpose. They were only toys to tickle him, toys to amuse him, until he awoke within himself the Spirit of Jesus. Then he sees an entirely different mission, not the amassing of wealth, but the redeeming of society, the redeeming of every man in the world. He comes to do his Father's will, and we are told in the 6th chapter of John, "This is my Father's will, that of all that he has given me, I should lose nothing, but I should raise it up again." So important. So incredibly important. He's really pointing out there Anybody who tries to disprove it will actually wind up proving it. Because if we're being honest with ourselves and we are actually putting this into practice and actually feeling it, we will prove it. And we'll do it for, at first, some of the things that we want. We'll do it for the material things. We'll do it to get successful. We'll do it for more money. We'll do it for love and romance, a romantic partner. And all of these things are great. All of these things are wonderful. We're here to experience all of it. But we will also come to realize the bigger point to all of this. It will awaken. It will awaken us for all intents and purposes. They were only toys to tickle him, toys to amuse him, until he woke within him the spirit of Jesus. Then he sees an entirely different mission. Not the amassing of wealth, but the redeeming of society. That part is 100% true. Yes, it is always fun and enjoyable to manifest these experiences, these material things, partnerships. Of course, all of that is wonderful and amazing. But in this practice, you will inevitably get to a point where it becomes so much more than that. This really is about redemption of ourself and society at large. Because we are society at large. Like, everyone is rooted within me because I am rooted within God. So that part is so incredibly true. You're going to really see the bigger picture and the different mission. Your mission will change. It will. Let's continue. Lose nothing. No, you don't excommunicate. You don't rub out. You simply raise it up again as you raise it up. You raise up yourself. You raise yourself up, and the journey is forever. You are moving up an infinite vertical line in your own wonderful imagination, and you only move up by lifting up others. Blind men think that they can save themselves, and because they think they can save themselves and discard the rest, the blind man has also said this hundreds of years ago. He saved as he saved others. Himself he cannot save. I say to you that it's a false statement. It was put into the mouth of the Pharisee, put into the mouth of the Sanhedrin, the leaders who thought they were leaders. But I will tell you, a man saves himself by and only by the saving of his fellow man. There is no other way of saving self other than by saving the real self, and every man is rooted in you who observes men. And so don't discard, raise them up, prune the tree, and become the real gardener in the garden of God. Take anything. You have a child today. We took all the requests this morning. There were dozens and dozens of requests this morning. Everyone must be answered. None must be discarded. Don't say one is impossible. There is nothing impossible to your imagination, and your imagination is Christ Jesus. With him, all things are possible. Use him, stir him, wake him from his sleep. He has been sleeping through the centuries. Because he has slept, he has dreamed into being all these strange, misshaped states. For the world only bears witness of the use or misuse of imagination. As we are told, he is the only thing in the world. What he is, the only thing in the world. Your imagination. For it is the habitation of every created thing, and by it all things are made, and without it nothing is made. So use it wisely, use it lovingly, and anytime you use your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you are at that moment literally mediating God to man. Imagination is the redemptive power of the world, and you are actually mediating God to man by using it in a loving and wonderful way. And that is the Pruning Shears of Revision. So again, I know that these are a lot of these are concepts and ideas that we've heard many, many times before. But I I wanted to follow up from the last lecture that we went over, The Coin of Heaven, where he speaks about reading this lecture. In his last lecture, The Coin of Heaven, he begs the audience to go back and read this lecture. Because if there's one thing, if we only take away one thing in all of his teachings, and that is revision, if we take only that, life will radically change for you. So stressing the importance, because again, I know that this is something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of us. It doesn't feel very good. The idea of revisiting past events that were not ideal, we may have a lot of aversion to this, but we want to practice anyways. We want to practice daily. Prune the vines daily. Do not let those weeds get out of control, because they will. And it is amazing as we start observing just how much of the crap of the day we are just taking with us, and it just builds on itself. That's how we wind up in patterns. That's how we wind up not seeing movement, not seeing progression, not seeing things change. We are still holding these old concepts of these other people in our mind. We're still seeing these other people as the unideal version. Unemployed, unloving, hot and cold. Like, all of this is what must be changed within us. And the most important thing that we can do is utilize revision. Now, like I mentioned, I have made a number of videos on revision. If you just go up to the search bar, type in Missy Renee revision, those will pop right up. If you are new to the topic, if you haven't heard about it and would like to learn more. But that concludes Neville's lecture of the Pruning Shears of Revision. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're interested in seeing my other videos in this Neville lecture series, go to my playlist tabs, and under there you will see the playlist that contains all the videos. So, hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I hope you guys took some good notes. Leave any comments if you have any questions, and much love. I will see you next time. Bye, guys.